It was an ordinary day for the rangers at the reserve, or so they thought. The sun rose above the savanna, casting a warm glow across the African plains. But for the 5 seasoned rangers who patrolled this territory, a storm was brewing, one unlike any they had ever encountered. For weeks, the presence of a rogue lion pride had been growing. Their behavior was erratic and dangerous. The pride, known for their striking golden manes and dark eyes, had begun attacking anything in their path. Livestock, vehicles, even the occasional unwary ranger. They didn't discriminate. No one understood why. The rangers had spent countless hours studying them, but something felt off. There was a wildness in their eyes, a fear and fury that had been sparked by something unseen, some trigger none of them could comprehend. Then one fateful morning the lions went further. As the rangers made their rounds, checking fences and ensuring the safety of the animals, a rustling in the tall grass gave way to the terrifying roar of the rogue pride. A sound that sent shivers down the spines of even the most experienced. The pride had come for them. It started with one lion, a massive male, charging from the brush. His body moved like a blur, his teeth bared in a snarl. The rangers barely had time to react. The first few shots fired from their tranquilizer guns missed as the lion attacked, striking down one ranger who had been caught off guard. The air was thick with dust, and the ground shook with the impact of the lion's powerful paws. Before they could even comprehend the chaos unfolding before them, the other 4 lions emerged from the shadows. This wasn't a simple attack. This was something much more calculated, as if the pride was working together, their primal instincts honed into a single, terrifying mission. The rangers fought back, but they were overwhelmed by the sheer ferocity of the attack. Ranger Caleb, the leader of the team, shouted for everyone to retreat, but it was too late. One by one the lions picked them off. What was once a controlled situation had devolved into a nightmare. Caleb knew their only hope was to regroup, but there was no time. The lions were relentless, their roars echoing across the reserve, striking terror into the hearts of the men who had always felt invincible against any wildlife threat. As the battle raged, Caleb noticed something that made his heart race with dread. Among the chaos and dust there was a small figure, a child. She was standing near the edge of the clearing, watching the scene unfold, completely unaware of the danger surrounding her. She was young, no older than 8, with wild curls and wide eyes filled with fear and wonder. But what struck Caleb was the fact that the lions had stopped attacking. They were still. Their attention had shifted. The rangers had no idea who this child was or how she had gotten there, but it didn't matter. They were too busy fighting for their lives. The little girl, oblivious to the danger, took a step forward, her small feet moving steadily toward the pride of deadly lions. "Get back!" Caleb screamed at her, his voice hoarse from the battle. "You're in danger." But the girl didn't flinch. Instead, she kept walking toward them, her arms outstretched as if she was welcoming them, not fearing them. The lions, now frozen, seemed to be watching her with something akin to curiosity. Caleb's heart was in his throat. Was this child insane? Did she not realize the gravity of the situation? How could she be so calm? Then something extraordinary happened. As the girl approached the first lion, a powerful male with a thick golden mane, the tension in the air shifted. The lion, who had been snarling moments before, slowly lowered his head. He looked at the girl, his eyes softening as she reached out a trembling hand to touch his snout. The moment her fingers made contact with the lion's fur, something in the air changed. The pride, who had been aggressive and unyielding moments earlier, began to retreat. One by one, the lions backed away as though they were obeying an unspoken command, an understanding only the little girl seemed to have. The rangers, breathless from their struggle and fear, watched in stunned silence as the lions turned and walked away. Their eyes were still locked on the girl, but there was no longer any aggression in them. It was as though they had seen something deep within her, that no one else could. Caleb couldn't understand what had just happened. Was it magic? A miracle? Or was there something more to this child than met the eye? But before he could process anything, the little girl turned and walked back toward the rangers, her face serene as if nothing out of the ordinary had just occurred. The lions were now gone, vanishing into the tall grasses from which they had emerged, leaving the rangers alive but bewildered. Who are you?" Caleb managed to ask, his voice shaking. The little girl smiled, her eyes bright with an unspoken understanding. "I'm Lily," she said softly. They just needed someone to listen. And with that, the tension in the air seemed to lift. The rangers were left with a single haunting thought. What had just happened? And why had the lions responded to this child in a way no one else could have ever predicted? The mystery of the rogue pride was far from over. But one thing was certain. This girl Lily was no ordinary child. She had done the unthinkable, something that no one had ever imagined possible. She had tamed the wildest of hearts. And now the real journey was about to begin. Lily stood among the rangers, her small frame casting a shadow beneath the golden sun. The chaos that had unfolded only moments ago felt as though it had come from another world. The lions were gone, but the air still hummed with the remnants of their presence. The ground, torn and disrupted, lay in eerie silence as the last echoes of their roars faded into the distance. The rangers, still trying to catch their breath, couldn't seem to grasp what had just happened. Caleb, his face pale from the adrenaline and shock, watched Lily closely. How had she done it? No tranquilizer, no weapon, no training could have made the lions retreat so quickly, especially when they had been in such a frenzy. He had seen the rage in their eyes, the savage fury that had sent his team scattering. But then, Lily. She had simply walked up to them, and in a matter of moments, the situation had transformed from a life-threatening attack to an inexplicable calm. Lily, Caleb's voice faltered as he tried to comprehend the situation. What did you do? The little girl didn't seem fazed by the weight of his question. Instead, she smiled softly, her gaze still distant, as if she had just returned from a place far beyond the physical world around her. The rangers gathered around her, their faces a mixture of confusion and awe. I didn't do anything, Lily said simply, her voice light, almost too innocent for the gravity of what had just transpired. I just listened. They needed someone to understand. One of the younger rangers, Jason, looked at Caleb with wide, uncertain eyes. Is she saying the lions communicated with her? His voice cracked slightly as if the very idea sounded too absurd to believe. Lily nodded, her eyes soft yet determined. Yes, lions aren't always angry. Sometimes they're just afraid. When you listen to them, you understand why they do what they do. Caleb rubbed his temple, trying to make sense of the words coming from this child. It didn't make sense, none of it did. How could someone so young, so small, have the power to control such dangerous, wild animals? And yet, there was something about her presence, something calming, something almost ethereal, that made him question everything he thought he knew about wildlife behavior. Another ranger, Maria, took a hesitant step forward. Lily, where did you come from? How did you get here? This is a restricted area. Lily's smile faded for a moment, and she looked down at her hands as if searching for the right words. She didn't seem frightened, just thoughtful. After a long pause, she finally spoke. I've been here before, she said quietly. I live in the village nearby. My family works with animals. My mother, she's a healer. She taught me how to listen to the land, to the animals. They speak in ways that are hard to understand if you don't know how to listen. The rangers exchanged glances, unsure of what to make of this. They had heard stories about villagers with a deep connection to the land, some even said to have the ability to communicate with animals in a mystical way. But those were just stories, legends told around campfires. Nothing more. Yet Lily's words carried a weight that made those old myths feel all too real. What do you mean, listen? Caleb asked, his voice more skeptical now, though tinged with curiosity. How can you understand them? Lily's eyes met his, and for a moment, it felt as if the entire world had stilled. You have to feel their pain, she said softly. You have to feel what they feel. The lions weren't just attacking because they were angry. They were scared. They were lost. Something had happened to their pride. I could feel it. I could feel the fear in them. I just showed them that it was okay to stop running, that they didn't need to fight anymore. Her words were simple, but they cut through the chaos in Caleb's mind. He had seen countless animals in distress, but he had never once considered the idea that they could be reaching out for help in the way Lily described. And yet, there she was, standing in front of him, this child who had seemingly calmed the most dangerous pride of lions he had ever encountered. As the group stood in stunned silence, another voice broke through the tension. It was Jason again, his eyes narrowed in disbelief. So, you're saying the lions were afraid of something? He shook his head. I don't buy it. Lions don't get afraid. They're kings of the jungle. They don't back down from anything. Lily's gaze turned to him, and in that moment, something in her eyes shifted. There was no judgment, no malice, just understanding. A deep, quiet knowing that seemed to transcend the limits of human comprehension. They're afraid of losing their place, she said softly. When they feel threatened, they strike. But they're not the only ones who get afraid. We all do. Sometimes it's not the fight that's the hardest part, it's letting go of the fear. Her words hung in the air, a profound truth that seemed to echo in the hearts of the rangers. Caleb could see the hesitation in their eyes, the doubt beginning to fade as they processed what Lily had said. Could it be that these lions, these fierce predators, had been driven by fear all along? And if that was true, what had caused it? Before anyone could speak further, a distant sound broke through the quiet, the unmistakable roar of a lion. It was far off but still close enough to make everyone tense. Caleb's hand instinctively went to his radio. "Any updates from the other teams?" he asked, his voice tight. There was a crackle before a response came through. "Caleb, we've got movement. There's another pride up ahead. Looks like they're headed toward the river." Caleb's heart sank. Was the situation truly under control? Or had they just bought themselves a brief moment of peace? He turned to Lily, his face full of questions. "Lily," he began, his voice softer now, "do you know what's going on with the other pride? Are they like the ones we just encountered?" The little girl nodded, her expression serious. "Yes," she said, her voice low. "They're lost too. But there's something worse waiting for them at the river." Caleb's instincts flared. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The Rangers had just survived one nightmare, but now another was waiting for them. And Lily, this mysterious child, seemed to know more than she was letting on. He gave the command for the team to prepare for another round of tracking. But this time, Caleb wasn't just worried about the lions. He was worried about what Lily had said, and what might be waiting for them at the river. The battle for survival was far from over, and they were about to face an even greater danger than they could have ever imagined. The journey to the river felt like an eternity. Every step Caleb took felt heavier than the last, as though the weight of what had just transpired hung over them like a storm. The distant roars of the rogue lions echoed softly in the background, still lingering in the air like a haunting reminder of the battle they had just survived. But it wasn't just the lions that Caleb couldn't shake from his mind, it was Lily. The little girl who had somehow tamed the savage beasts, her presence like a calm in the center of a storm. She had done what no one else could, and now she was leading them toward something they couldn't yet understand. Lily walked ahead, her tiny figure barely noticeable among the dense trees and thick foliage. Her pace was slow, unhurried, as though she were in no rush to get anywhere. She moved with a quiet grace, her feet barely making a sound on the forest floor. The Rangers followed behind her, unsure of what to make of this strange child who had brought an end to their near-death experience with nothing more than a gentle presence. Caleb watched her, his mind racing with questions he couldn't answer. "Lily," he called, his voice tentative as he tried to keep up with her. "How did you know what to do? The lions, they were attacking us. How did you stop them?" She didn't turn around to look at him. Her eyes were fixed ahead, and for a moment, Caleb wondered if she had heard him at all. But then, she answered in a voice so calm it seemed to carry the weight of centuries. "I didn't stop them," she said softly. "I just showed them that they didn't need to fight anymore. They were scared, Caleb. They weren't attacking because they wanted to. They were attacking because they were lost. They needed someone to understand their fear." Caleb felt a chill crawl up his spine as her words settled in. He had seen aggression from lions before, but this was different. The lions had attacked without warning, without hesitation. They had been enraged, driven by something Caleb couldn't understand. And yet Lily, with her soft words and quiet gaze, had somehow reached them. How was that possible? How could a child, someone so young, so small, calm the fury of a rogue pride of lions? Jason, one of the younger Rangers, walked beside Caleb, his expression one of disbelief. "This doesn't make sense. Lions don't get scared like that. They're predators, they don't just—" "They do," Lily interrupted, her voice firm yet gentle. "Even the fiercest animals feel fear. It's part of who they are." Caleb opened his mouth to ask more questions, but before he could, the river came into view. The dense jungle opened up into a clearing and the Rangers froze. The sight of the river was both serene and unsettling. It was wide and powerful, its waters moving swiftly over rocks and debris. The banks were thick with vines and roots, and the air around it seemed to carry a strange energy. The roar of the water filled the silence, and Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to walk into something they weren't prepared for. Lily stepped forward, her eyes fixed on the flowing water. "It's here," she said quietly, as though the river itself was speaking to her. "The river holds the memories of the land. It remembers the past and it calls to those who are lost." Caleb looked at her, confusion written across his face. "What do you mean, the river calls to them? The lions, are they drawn to this place?" Lily nodded, her expression solemn. "Yes. The river has a way of drawing creatures who are lost. Animals, people, anyone who needs to find something. The lions were searching for something. They didn't know what it was, but the river did." Jason spoke up again, his voice low. This is insane. We're talking about a river calling lions. How is that even possible? Lily turned toward him, her gaze steady and filled with a quiet wisdom that seemed beyond her years. It's not about the river itself, she explained. It's what the river represents. It's the heart of the land. The river holds the spirit of everything that's ever lived here, the animals, the trees, the earth itself. And when something is lost, it's drawn to that spirit. The lions didn't come here by accident. They were looking for something to guide them. And now they found it. Caleb felt a strange mix of awe and skepticism. He had spent his entire career studying wildlife, understanding animal behavior, and working with rangers in some of the most dangerous places on Earth. But this was something completely different. He had never encountered anything like it. He had never heard of a river having the power to guide animals, to calm their fears. Yet there they were, the rogue lions, the very same ones who had attacked them earlier, now moving toward the water. As if on cue, the lions began to emerge from the treeline, their massive bodies moving silently through the underbrush. It was the same pride, but this time they weren't charging. They moved with a purpose, their eyes fixed on the river, their bodies tense but not aggressive. The sight was surreal. These were the lions who had nearly killed them, the same lions who had seemed unstoppable, filled with rage. And yet now they were moving toward the water like they were searching for something. The rangers instinctively reached for their tranquilizers, but Lily held up a hand, stopping them. "Don't," she said softly. "They're not here to fight. They're here to find peace." The pride stopped at the edge of the river. The leader of the pack, a massive lion with a golden mane that glowed in the light, stepped forward. He locked eyes with Lily, and for a moment the world seemed to stand still. The tension in the air was palpable, as if everyone was holding their breath. Lily didn't flinch. She didn't back away. She simply stood there, her gaze calm and steady, her presence unwavering. Slowly the lion lowered his head. The other lions followed suit, bowing their heads in a show of submission. It was as if they were acknowledging her, recognizing her power, her understanding. The rangers couldn't believe what they were witnessing. These were not just any lions. They were fierce, powerful animals, predators who ruled the land with their strength. And yet they were bowing to a child. It was incomprehensible. Caleb's voice broke the silence. What's happening? Why are they doing this?" Lily looked up at him, her expression soft but filled with a quiet certainty. "The river has shown them the way. They no longer need to fight. They just needed someone to guide them. And now they've found peace." The rangers stood frozen, unable to tear their eyes away from the sight before them. The rogue pride, once filled with rage and fear, now seemed peaceful. The lions didn't approach, but they didn't retreat either. They simply stood there in the presence of this child, as if they were waiting for something or someone to lead them. And then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the lions turned and disappeared into the jungle, their powerful bodies fading into the shadows. The rangers stood in stunned silence, unsure of what they had just witnessed. Lily turned to them, her eyes bright with the understanding that came from something far beyond the ordinary. "They won't hurt anyone anymore," she said. "They've found the peace they were looking for. But there's still more to be done." Caleb looked at her, his mind racing with 1,000 questions. "What do we do now?" Lily's gaze softened and she smiled faintly. "We wait. The river will show us the way. When it's time, the land will call to us and we'll know what to do." The rangers stood in awe, watching as the river flowed steadily in front of them, its surface calm and unchanging. But Caleb knew that this moment was only the beginning. There was still much more to uncover, and the journey was far from over. The river held secrets that had yet to be revealed. And Lily, this mysterious child, seemed to be the key to unlocking them. The rangers stood still, their eyes fixed on the spot where the rogue lions had disappeared into the jungle. It was impossible to wrap their minds around what had just occurred. These were lions, ferocious, unrelenting and fearsome, and yet in the presence of Lily they had submitted. It felt as though the world had shifted in ways they couldn't comprehend. As the sound of the river flowed in the background, Caleb's thoughts swirled with questions, the most pressing of all being, what had the river truly done? What had Lily unlocked in them? But before he could voice any of his thoughts, Lily turned to face him and the rest of the rangers. Her expression was calm but serious, as if she knew the next steps were crucial. "There's something more you need to understand," she said softly, her voice cutting through the heavy silence. "The lions didn't just come to the river for peace. They were drawn here by something deeper. They were a part of something that is now waking up." Caleb felt his heart race. "What do you mean? Something is waking up?" He exchanged looks with Jason and the others, all of them still processing what they had just witnessed. Lily nodded slowly, her gaze drifting to the flowing water once again. The river? It's ancient. It holds memories of the land, of everything that has happened here. It was always alive, but it has been dormant for a long time. The lions were only a part of a greater balance, something much bigger than they understood. She paused, her voice lowering as though sharing a sacred secret. And now the balance is shifting. Jason took a step forward, his brow furrowed. What do you mean by balance? Are you saying something else is coming? Lily's eyes met his, her gaze sharp and knowing. Yes. The river has been quiet for too long. It's calling not just to the lions but to all of the creatures. Everyone that is lost, everyone that has been displaced. There's a force awakening, one that has the power to either restore the land to what it once was, or destroy it altogether. Caleb swallowed hard, feeling the weight of her words settle in his chest. What kind of force? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. It's the spirit of the land, she replied as though the answer was obvious. The river? It doesn't just carry water. It carries the essence of everything that's ever lived here. It remembers the harmony of the earth, the cycle of life and death. But when that balance is disturbed for too long, something has to be done. The river is reacting to the imbalance. And now, it's calling for help. For a long moment, no one spoke. The jungle around them seemed impossibly quiet, as though it was holding its breath, waiting for something. The river's steady current hummed a rhythmic tune like a heartbeat. Caleb felt an overwhelming urge to ask more questions, to demand answers. But somehow, in the presence of Lily, it felt like the right questions hadn't yet been asked. What can we do? Jason asked, breaking the silence. His voice was filled with uncertainty, but also a sense of urgency. How do we stop whatever is coming? Lily turned her eyes toward the jungle, where the shadows of the trees seemed to stretch out toward the river, as though the land itself were reaching. You can't stop it, she said gently. You can only help guide it. The balance of nature must be restored, but that will require more than just calming the lions. It requires understanding the land, the spirit of it. The animals, the trees, the water, they all depend on each other. But they've been fighting, lost in their own fear and confusion. You need to help them remember. Caleb felt a weight settle in his heart. He had always believed in the power of nature, in the interconnectedness of all living things, but this was something far deeper. This wasn't about saving an individual animal. This was about saving the land itself. The rangers had been part of this reserve for years, working to protect its creatures, its wild heart. But they had never been asked to do something like this. How do we help them remember? Caleb asked, his voice steady but filled with the enormity of what Lily was suggesting. How do we bring back the balance? Lily smiled, a small but knowing smile. You already have, she said softly. The lions, they came here for a reason. They were the first to answer the call. But now others will come. You have to be ready to guide them just like you guided the lions. The river will help you. It always has. There was a moment of quiet understanding between them. The rangers had been trained to handle danger, to protect animals, to fight when necessary. But what Lily was asking of them wasn't about fighting. It wasn't about weapons or force. It was about healing. It was about understanding the land, listening to it, and responding to its needs. The rangers had never been asked to do that before, but now they had no choice. Before Caleb could say anything else, a strange, low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. The jungle seemed to stir with life, and the water of the river began to ripple with an unnatural intensity. The air felt charged as though something was on the move, something large and powerful. Lily's expression hardened, her eyes narrowing as she focused on the river. It's starting, she said, her voice filled with quiet resolve. The spirit of the land is waking. You need to be ready. The rangers instinctively tightened their grips on their weapons, but this time they didn't know what they were preparing for. Caleb scanned the horizon, his heart pounding. Something was coming, something that was tied to the river's awakening. And then they saw it. From the far side of the river, a figure emerged, tall and majestic, its movements graceful and powerful. It wasn't a lion, nor a creature Caleb had ever seen before. It was a massive ethereal figure, with features that seemed to shift and blur like something out of a dream. It was as though the spirit of the land itself had taken form, a creature born of the earth and water, ancient and wise. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and the air around it shimmered with energy. The rangers stood frozen, unable to move as the figure approached. It didn't speak, but its presence was overwhelming. Caleb's heart thudded in his chest as he realized that this was no ordinary animal. This was the spirit of the land, the force Lily had spoken of, the one that had been disturbed and was now awakening. Lily stepped forward, her small figure standing against the mighty force. She looked up at the spirit with a calmness that left the rangers in awe. "We're ready," she whispered. "We will help you restore the balance." The spirit paused, its eyes meeting Lily's. For a long moment, there was only silence, the kind of silence that seemed to hold all the answers. Then, slowly, the spirit nodded as though acknowledging her, and with a flash of light, it disappeared into the jungle, its presence lingering in the air like the fading echo of a forgotten song. The rangers stood in stunned silence, their hearts racing, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. It was clear that they had just witnessed something beyond human understanding, something that transcended the natural world. They weren't just here to protect the animals anymore. They were here to protect the spirit of the land itself. Caleb turned to Lily, his voice barely a whisper. "What happens now?" Lily smiled softly, her eyes full of knowing. "Now we follow the river. The balance is shifting, but we are not alone. The land is awakening, and together we will restore it." The rangers nodded, their resolve hardening. They didn't know what lay ahead, but they knew one thing for sure. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a battle for the soul of the earth itself. And they would fight, not with weapons, but with understanding, with care, and with the quiet strength that had been passed down through generations. Together they would restore the balance. Together they would answer the river's call.